So I'd like to welcome Maria Korolov as today's guest on Above the Book.
Well,
Maria
thank
is
you very much for having me.
You're very welcome. Maria is a science fiction writer who covers cybersecurity, artificial intelligence, and extended reality as an award-winning tech journalist in her day job. And she's also written books including, if I'm getting this right, Kerm Times, and
Crim Times.
Crim Times and the Lost King of Crims, which are both available on Amazon. She's also the publisher of Metastellar, a new online magazine of speculative fiction. And of course, we know her from the Hypergrid business, which has been covering virtual environments since 2009. So, Maria, it's an honor to have you back on here with us.
Well, thank you so much for having me. And since you mentioned my books, I'd like to plug that my third book, Crim Deeds, is now available on pre-order for Amazon. I've just finished writing the 10th book in that series, and I've started the 11th one. The others are up on my website, crim.world, and you can read the early editions, pre-editing, the raw versions for free, and, catch any typos that you want to, or any plot holes that you like. And I've got a couple of other series set in the same virtual world as well.
Cool. Well, listen, since we dived into that, why don't we keep going in that direction for the moment? So you have Metastellar, which is your new website. Actually, I'm not quite sure how new it is, but to me
it's a year and a half old.
Oh, well, there we go. A year and a half. That's pretty good. So what prompted you to get, to develop that website and where it's going?
Well, I decided to become a science fiction writer and got together with a bunch of other science fiction writers. I'm in a bunch of writer support groups and stuff like that. And we're all bemoaning the fact that it's really hard to get published and that there's such a shortage of science fiction magazines out there to get your short stories into. And the magazines that are there are for the most part oriented towards being print publications. So they're living in the past, which is ironic because they're science fiction magazines and should be living at the very least in the present. But so there's very few online publications for science fiction. So we decided to start our own. And a bunch of us writers got together and just launched it. Since we did, I think we've published more than 500 pieces at this point by more than a couple of hundred different authors. We've had way over 100,000 page views. We started a YouTube channel. We've interviewed people like Larry Niven on it. We've got more than, I think, 10,000 views at this point, and counting. I think we're up to 12,000 on the YouTube channel. So that's been a lot of fun. We have several people hosting shows on our YouTube channel. I do one of them. And plus occasional author interviews and virtual reality headset reviews and things like that. So it's been a blast. And I've definitely learned a lot about the science fiction kind of ecosystem by editing this magazine. And if you're watching, the magazine is completely free, but we do have a Patreon page. So we pay for the content thanks to the kind support of our contributors. So thank you very much, everybody. And everything's always free to our readers. So we have a newsletter, or you can go to the website and read free short stories every day.
Cool. Is there a specific focus, because you said that there's hundreds of people that have been submitting content. Mm-hmm. Is it in a specific direction? Is there a specific subgenre within science fiction that everybody's sort of focusing on, or is it really all over the place?
It's all over the place because us founders are all over the place. We have people on our team who write vampire erotica and who write hard science fiction and who write poetry and fantasy and horror and literally everything you can think of. And as far as I'm concerned, we have unlimited space on the website to put up anything we feel like putting it up, as long as we think somebody out there might enjoy it. And it falls even vaguely into the area of speculative fiction.
Very good. Is there a tie-in with the type of virtual worlds type thing that we deal with here?
Well, I'm actually starting a series of reviews about the metaverse. So I plan to review books about the metaverse and TV shows, and movies. And a couple of days ago, I interviewed the author of Meta Wars, which is a book that's set in a Ready Player One kind of metaverse. And I've done some virtual headset reviews for our YouTube channel. I'm going to be doing more. And occasionally I'll cross-post articles to both sites. So I just did an article, What is the Metaverse? And I posted on both sites. And after Zuckerberg came out with his big, creepy reptilian metaverse speech, I did write-ups of that for both sites as well.
Right. One of the things that I really like about science fiction is how, in a lot of cases, it eventually ends up becoming science fact.
Yeah, sometimes.
And we've seen a lot of that with Star Trek and a lot of other type things. Is there anything that's being published right at the moment which is sort of, you think maybe is sort of going that direction?
I think there's a lot of stuff that's happening in real life that's heading in that direction. So when I saw Zuckerberg's presentation about Meta, how basically everyone was going to be on the virtual reality version of Facebook, and all the businesses were going to be in Facebook, and people were going to be in Facebook, and people are going to have worlds in Facebooks and all their relationships, virtual relationships in Facebooks. That reminded me a lot of something like the Ready Player One universe, where in Oasis, one company pretty much controls the entire metaverse. Or like in the Matrix, it was the aliens who controlled the metaverse, but it was like, again, one group controlling everything. And I personally would like to see a decentralized metaverse where everybody who wants to can have their virtual world and travel to all the other virtual worlds. And as you know, I'm a big fan of OpenSim, exactly for that reason. I like having choices. I like being able to come to Second Life if I feel like it, to go to a nonprofit grid if I feel like it, to go to a role-playing grid if I feel like it, to have my own private company grid or an organizational grid or a personal home grid if I feel like it. I like having that choice. And I look forward to a metaverse where we do have that choice. A lot of books about the metaverse right now tend to have a dystopian approach of, this is the worst case scenario if one company owns it, and we're all going to be controlled by some megalomaniac. Or in Ready Player One, it's basically a Willy Wonka type guy who decides to leave the whole thing to some kid who's good at 80s trivia. So, yeah, dystopia.
Dystopia. Well, you've opened up the door on Meta, so we might as well go there. So truly, tell us how you feel about Mr. Zuckerberg. What a Facebook guy.
I already said the word reptilian, I believe.
I did, but he's not part of that group. Those folks are part of a different alien culture.
Okay, fine. Yes, I defer to your expertise on alien breeds.
There we go. Isn't he one of the Greys? I don't know.
Well, when he was saying that companies had a problem coming to the Facebook metaverse because their employees had to use their personal accounts, and his solution to that was to allow them to create business accounts on Facebook. I mean, I felt like screaming at my computer monitor. No, that's not why companies don't want to come to Facebook. It's because of all the creepy privacy issues and the lack of controls over your environment and all the other huge problems of being on Facebook. This is the reason why most corporations have websites instead of pages on Facebook as their primary web presence. I mean, maybe if you're a tiny little plumber locally, you might just have Facebook. But pretty much everybody else might use Facebook for some marketing, but their website for everything else. And I think the same thing's going to be happening in virtual worlds and virtual reality in the metaverse. Companies will want their own worlds, or at least corporate friendly worlds, and maybe use something like Meta for marketing or LinkedIn for job hunting. But you want to be able to own your own future. And you can't do that if you're living, if you're renting in somebody else's metaverse.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, though, isn't Apple sort of also based on that type of model? Like, nobody shall come onto the internet but through Apple, and if you want to be interconnected with anything else, you're sort of out of luck.
Yeah, they make up for it by having a really, really cool technology. When I had to switch to an Android phone because Samsung had VR support and Apple back then didn't, it was really painful at first to switch away. And I did very much like the user friendliness of the Apple experience. But overall and like politically, I prefer the Android model where it's an open operating system, kind of like the World Wide Web. You have open Apache web servers. Anybody could have their own web operating system or their own website, their own phone, use Android OS or their own, own breakaway version of Android. And it allows for people to have a lot cheaper phones, allows more people to have phones, and allows more flexibility in the design of the phone. So if you notice, like if a company wants to have its own phone, it's going to go on an Android operating system because they can't make their own phone on Apple. Apple won't license the operating system to other people. So if you want to get into the phone business, Android or something, like Android is what you go with.
But I mean, obviously, we do have companies like Apple and like Facebook and even Google to a certain extent, even though Google owns or managing, Android.
Yeah.
We have these companies that are trying to do that type of thing where they want to try to control everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And we have this dichotomy between wanting to have interoperability, which requires standards and not too much in the way of diversity, and having a free and open market, which allows for disruptive innovation, progression, out-of-the-box thinking. Mm-hmm. So where do you see some of this stuff going? And we'll focus on Facebook and Facebook's interaction with the metaverse for the moment, but eventually I want to bring this back to Open Simulator and Second Life as well.
What I'm hoping is that we'll have the AOL situation where you have a company like AOL, say Facebook, throwing a whole bunch of money into getting people online. Or in Facebook's case, selling the headset at cost or even below cost and kind of bullying everybody to learn a new technology. And then you have competition rising up, open source alternatives, the World Wide Web Consortium, standard setting bodies, the Apache Foundation, creating virtual equivalents of that are more in the public space. And even to like back then, originally AOL didn't even allow you to access other websites from inside of it or send email to anybody else. It was like a completely closed world. But right from the beginning, like the Oculus Quest, Meta Quest headset, it allows you to visit VR websites already. So there already is a VR standard for websites. You can put on the Meta Quest headset, go to another website outside of the Facebook ecosystem, and access another virtual world through that headset and have it be fully compatible already. So I think that is a very, very promising beginning, and it shows that Meta at least understands that this should be, at the very least, should be an option. So I think that's a promising sign.
What are the things that you see where they're not understanding? I mean, we had talked to Patch the other day, and certainly the idea of griefing and a lot of the experiences that we've had in virtual worlds, that learning curve certainly is one of them. But do you see other areas where they're just not getting it? They're not understanding it?
I think the privacy issue is the big one. I think Facebook just either deliberately or just willfully refuses to understand how much a problem privacy is for people in the social sphere. And for them, it's the main thing that they're selling. At least Google has other products that they're selling. They're not only selling your privacy, although that's a big chunk of what they're selling. Microsoft sells other stuff. Apple sells other stuff. But Facebook, pretty much, that's 100% of their value proposition is your privacy. So I don't think that they can really get away from that too much without kind of destroying their business model, which I think is why they're fighting so hard to like avoid making any changes or putting in any kind of significant moderation or any of the kind of controls that people want to see in a dominant social platform like Facebook.
Right, but I guess that's sort of an interesting idea from my perspective, because some of the congressional hearings, I guess, that I've sort of seen have talked about this idea that these companies are too big, that they have too much control. But then at the same time, they also criticize them for not controlling enough. Right? So,
yeah, they can't win.
Yeah.
We're always going to have that with free speech. And I don't have any solution to that. Humans haven't found any solution to that yet, so I don't think I'm going to in the next few minutes. But I would like to see them get better at it. I would like to see them to see less of a monopoly happening. I'm also hoping that the pace of change will just naturally take care of things. I mean, I remember when Microsoft used to be like a huge monopoly and everybody was worried that it was going to take over the internet and everybody was suing it because it was a monopoly and it was pushing its browser on everybody. And now it's got pretty much no market share on the browser. It's got no market share in smartphones. So things change, and you never know whether your monopoly is going to last very long, considering the pace of change of technology.
Yeah, I want to switch topics just a little bit here. Go back to the hypergrid business side of things. I believe you had said a couple of years ago that you were going to back off of that publication a little bit, but obviously it is center to a lot of the things that we look at in terms of getting a lot of information on where things are going. So what's happening with hypergrid business right at the moment?
Well, when I decided to become a science fiction writer and write about virtual worlds, and I learned how hard it is to find an audience and break into the business of writing science fiction, I realized that I had a captive audience right there at Hypergood Business of people who recognize my name and who are interested in virtual worlds, and maybe some of them might want to buy my book. So, I abandoned the plan of abandoning Hypergood Business.
Excellent. I think we're all thankful for it.
So we're back to doing our monthly stats report. Although I have delegated some of the work, I have a new editor, Alex, who's doing a lot of the editing stuff. David is doing a lot of the writing, including the stats report. We've got. I'm always open to columnists to do travel logs and reviews and cover events, whatever it is that they want to do, how-to articles. I'm always happy to have that. It's a great way to promote your grid, or to promote your content, or promote your whatever stuff it is you do by writing about it and showcasing what other people in your space are doing. By promoting your competitors, you're actually promoting yourself, because you're kind of a good member of the community, and people who read your article because they want that kind of stuff will say, oh, this guy has great taste. I will want to check out his own stuff too.
Yeah. So now that we know that you're back into it, thank you. Let's talk a little bit about Second Life and Open Simulator. So obviously the last couple of years has been COVID.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a point at which the entire ecosystem, so to speak, was sort of looking a little bit nebulous, and then COVID came along. What have you found in terms of where between Second Life and Open Simulator? What have you found what has been the net result?
I don't know. There seemed to have been an initial spike in usage in Second Life. That seems to have died down. We're still continuing to see growth in Open Sim. But it's a trickle of growth. I think every month a certain number of people discover they can get a whole region for $10 and come over and bring their friends over. And so it's kind of been slowly but steadily growing over the last 10, 12 years. There isn't I haven't seen an inflection point hit. Zoom hit an inflection point. It went from nothing to everybody's now on Zoom, because it had such a compelling and clear advantage and such a huge usability benefit over all the competing options. And with virtual worlds, there's still such a high learning curve. There's still usability barriers that haven't been overcome. The user interface hasn't changed in any significant way since I first got here. 2008? Oh my God, I'm so old. Yeah, long time ago.
You and me both.
It's still. I think somebody once described it as playing the piano, where your left hand is hitting one bunch of keys and your right hand's moving the mouse and hitting the buttons. And you have to have both your hands coordinated in order to be able to do anything in Second Life or Open Sim, because it's the same interface. And it's kind of tricky to learn. And if you're away from it for a couple of days, you forget how to use it and you have to relearn it again. So unless you're somebody who's in the platform daily, or at least several times a month, if you step away from it and have to come back, it's difficult. And none of your clothes fit, and you have to almost redress yourself from scratch and learn how the camera controls work all over again. So it's hard. It's a really, really hard sell. And the viral adoption thing is not helping at all. People do not bring their friends in. Um, People seem to be more embarrassed to admit that they're in Second Life or OpenSim, rather than excited about it. I was super excited about it when I first got into it. I was telling everybody. I launched a blog about it. Where I was like writing about it almost daily. How cool all this stuff was. And I try to get all my friends, my family, everybody into it. And I can be very persuasive when, I really, really put energy into it. I haven't been able to persuade anybody I know into coming into OpenSim unless I literally paid them to.
So where do you find the niche is for these particular softwares? Like what does this really do well?
I really don't know. There's a certain kind of social role play that it works well for. There's a certain kind of support group it works well for. I've been in business meetings and support groups where this kind of setting has worked well. But I'm on the organizing board of like virtual world conferences of various kinds. I don't want to name any names, but like one of the biggest ones that is not this one, but another one. We're meeting on Skype. We're meeting on Discord. We hardly ever have meetings in OpenSim because it's a pain. Even though the conference is going to be about OpenSim, actually holding the meeting in OpenSim is more of a pain than holding it over Zoom or Skype or Discord or almost any other channel, because you do have to load up the viewer. You do have to install the latest update if you haven't logged in a couple of days. You do have to make sure you're dressed and aren't showing up naked at the event. Because I have given speeches naked because my clothes didn't show up when I landed on the conference stage in a virtual world. That was fun. So you get all this stuff. It takes up a window on your computer monitor. It takes up bandwidth, and it can be easier to do it over Skype or Discord or Zoom or anything, because you get the screen sharing, you get all the business kind of meeting tools, and there hasn't been a lot of investment in making the OpenSim / Second Life environment either particularly friendly for the average user or particularly friendly for the business user. And like I said, it's a real shame because I'm a huge, huge fan of the platform.
Yeah, I've found myself that it's almost as if it's a technology in search of a purpose rather than a purpose in search of a technology.
Yeah.
At the same time, I agree with you in that, there are some incredible things that you can do in here. What do you feel would help improve this environment becoming more competitive? And it, regardless of the direction, because you talked about the idea of making it simpler for individuals or more beneficial towards businesses. So in either direction, what do you feel sort of needs to happen here?
Well, I used to think that adding some features, like for example, having a web browser, or having easier to use avatars, or having business features would solve the problems. But I've seen companies address all of those. I've seen like Cloud Party had a web-based viewer, and so have other companies. And there's a bunch of companies offering business-focused virtual worlds. there's Protosphere, VenueGen, a whole bunch of them. I wrote about it for CIO Magazine and for Network World when those guys launched, and they addressed the business side of it. They had the business avatars. They had the integration with Office 365 and all the business tools that you would want, and none of them took off either. So at this point, I'm really loath to say, oh, this is what this platform needs to take off. And I used to be really dismissive of augmented reality, but these days I'm thinking that if our cell phones are replaced by glasses, where we wave our hands and we see our text messages floating in the air in front of us, and we see Pokemon sitting behind a tree, or the zombie chasing us when we go on a jog, or all that stuff that augmented reality does, there's a very short step from augmented reality to virtual reality and to extended reality. And the companies that I've talked to, the vendors working on the AR headsets, these are the wraparound sunglasses, basically. Not the huge, bulky headsets that we have for VR, but basically something that looks like a pair of sunglasses. So you put them on and then go fully opaque for virtual reality and mostly transparent for augmented reality and everything in between. And if they replace smartphones, and all the smartphone companies are investing hugely in this, Google and Apple and Samsung and everybody are investing in AR, augmented reality support for their phones. So if this is direction that things are going, that I think the path to the metaverse might go through the AR glasses and not through virtual worlds like I thought it was going to.
Well, there's two immediate issues that I'm sort of seeing with that right at the moment. And this is from a lay perspective, right? Because obviously I know you write about this stuff. The first one is obviously cost, because you look at HoloLenses, which I think is probably the closest to what you're describing in terms of.
Yeah, they're like several $1,000s. Yeah.
Yeah, $3,500 US.
Yep.
Never mind getting them into Canada, right? So the price point just simply isn't there.
Yeah, right? Well, the price is going to drop. I mean, if Apple jumps on it, if Google and Samsung jump on it, and they're already investing billions in it, I think and all the key pieces of the technology are there. So I've talked to investors, and I've talked to the people running these companies, the vendors building the technology, and the lenses are already there that go from fully opaque to fully transparent. You need tiny little cameras to be in there to pick up hand motions and your head position. So the cameras already exist and they're there. You need computer processors to get smaller to fit into your glasses, or you wear the processor, in a phone on your belt. And you need batteries to get smaller so you can wear them in your glasses. But those things are all coming, and if we get to mass production, the price is going to drop. And it doesn't have to drop all the way to $20. People will pay several $100s for a high-end smartphone. Yeah. And if these glasses are a smartphone replacement, then people will happily pay several $100s for AR glasses. And I think we're within reach of that price point for those glasses within the next 5 years or so.
I was about to ask because are we talking similar to like 2 decades ago where we said, electric vehicles are going to be coming out within 5 years. And here it is 25 years later. And yeah, you can buy an electric vehicle, but good luck getting, beyond 300 miles with the silly thing, right?
Yes, it's exactly like that. It's going to be 5 years away for 30 years. And then one day it's going to be there. And we're like, whoa, what happened?
Right. Okay. So the other piece, and this has been a massive complaint across the board with regards to virtual reality, augmented reality, the ability to create content. Right now, all the content creators are, it's high-end stuff. You don't have to, but it's essentially a degree program to be able to create content for these devices.
But you know what the single most popular virtual world is? And I think you had the guy here on the show. And creating content in Minecraft is easy enough for an elementary school kid to do. Because my niece is like super into Minecraft. And it's got virtual reality support already. And it's a shared virtual world where you can build in amazing stuff in it. My little niece is building working roller coasters in it.
Right, but I guess, how do I want to put this? Let's go back to the comment that you made earlier with regards to the fact that, businesses want control. Yeah. They want to be able to control their IP. They want to control, which is the reason why they're not on Facebook.
Right.
Right. If they have anything on Facebook, it's a business card. That's basically it, right? And that and some social media stuff. So how do we, and I'm going to say this from a business perspective, even though this is about education, because it applies to both. How do we create content simply and easily for these things? Because from a training perspective, I don't want to create a roller coaster. I want to create a course. I want to be able to integrate my students into something here. I want my students to be able to do something productive with the environment. If I have to spend 2 years to train them on how to develop content, the product's of no use to me if I'm constantly on the hook with other developers that are going to be charging several $1,000s to create anything useful.
One of the things that I loved, really, really loved early on in my time in Second Life and OpenSim was the video The Builder. Do you remember that? A guy's wife is in a coma or something, and he builds this new virtual world for her every day. It's this beautiful video. And
I don't think I've seen it, but now I want to go see it.
it was just beautiful. It's just called The Builder. I think it's a few minutes long. Very, very touching. And that for me was kind of the joy of being in the OpenSim Second Life environment. You wave your hands and the world is created around you. And I love that about it. And at a slightly better level of graphics than you get in Minecraft. So I do like that very, very much. And I think that was a lot of the motivation for educators and nonprofits to come to Second Life and OpenSim is because you can create the environment around you relatively easily. The content is super cheap. It costs pennies. A lot of it is free and open source. You can pick up a whole hello person who just sat on my lap. Like I said, the joys of virtual environments. People can just like teleport in and sit on your lap.
No kidding.
But as I was saying, yeah, you can wave your hand and the environment comes to life around you. If building is one of the most joyful times I have in OpenSim, just building stuff. I love doing it. I think it's a lot of fun. I do not have fun with Blender and 3D Max and Maya and all that other stuff. But building with prims inside OpenSim, where you just wave your hands and the world forms around you, is just such, for me, a joyful experience. And I would like to see it very much replicated in whatever the next generation virtual world is. And I hope that whatever the next incarnation is, kind of holds on to that, because that for me was a lot of the magic and the joy of being here.
A lot of people I find it's the same thing with in here. They love to tinker, they love to build. And that ability to create various different things, right? In terms of bringing their imagination to life. Philip's original vision for this. At the same time, you know, the entire platform is not just simply about creating games or you know, when I got in here, I realized so much that this was as much a business platform as it was an opportunity to be creative.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And a lot of people have taken that to heart in terms of how they've gone about things. However, one of my concerns, and I'd like you to speak to this a little bit, is the fact that when we look at Second Life and Open Simulator, a lot of it has tended to be stagnant for the last 10 years or so.
Mm-hmm.
It was, while this is still very cutting edge to a certain extent in terms of what it does, we haven't had the same type of innovation curve in here that other technologies have had. So the introduction of AI, the introduction of machine learning, you know, the ability to tap into cloud services. None of that's available to us here. We're very, very limited. Right? How do you feel where we've sort of gotten to this point and where we're potentially going to go over the next 5 years or so?
I have a feeling that companies and developers who are willing to invest in this technology are looking for growing platforms to make the investment in. And this isn't a growing platform. So it's a chicken and egg kind of situation. It's not growing because people aren't investing in new interface, new modalities, new experiments, but people don't want to invest in those things because the platform isn't growing. You mentioned AI. I would love to see AI applied to building. Imagine what you can do if all the controls you had were AI powered, so you can throw realistic rock textures up on the walls around you without having to like be an expert on Blender and GIMP and Maya and everything else, where you could bring things to life, where you can add interactivity elements without having to learn LSL programming. I mean, I love LSL. I think it's a lot of fun to program in it, but it is a bit of a learning curve. Having that kind of functionality in a more accessible way would just be awesome. I would love to see a future where all of that is possible.
You write a lot in terms of cybersecurity, and I know Patch was talking about something very basic, which is two-factor authentication.
Mm-hmm.
And we also have proxy servers between us as avatars and the outside world. Right. So you know, I from within here, I can't access a website directly, so to speak, right? I have to go through Linden Lab servers to get to content, which is then anonymized. So it makes the ability to get access to services that require that type of connection that we now take for granted, you know, in order to be able to do useful things. Right? So, you know, if I access a Facebook website from within here, Facebook can't track that it's, as far as I know, Facebook can't track that it's me. Right? Are there specific aspects with regards to cybersecurity and where you're seeing OpenSim develop and where we are currently that you feel maybe we should be looking at in a bit more detail or more concerned about?
Given the small size of the OpenSim user base, maybe there's somebody using it for money laundering for very small amounts of money. But and there's definitely people impersonating other people for the hell of it, like griefers and that kind of thing, and stealing content. But it's not a very particularly significant security issue. I think that as we get closer to immersive virtual reality, where the platform that we're in is tracking every single thing we say, the direction where we look, our heart rate, whether our palms are sweating, all that stuff. I think that's going to be a huge privacy issue. Cybersecurity wise, it's probably as dangerous as any other social media platform. You're giving them a bunch of information. If they get hacked, all that information gets stolen. I don't think that virtual worlds are particularly unique in that regard. And I do know that gaming companies tend to be targets for cyber attacks, but that's mostly because you have a lot of teenagers playing games who are into hacking and who hack each other for like the hell of it, or send DDoS attacks against other players to give themselves an edge in games. So you get a lot of those kind of attacks. So that happens probably a little bit less in OpenSim and Second Life because it's not a location for competitive gaming. I don't personally know of any competitive games in OpenSim other than breedables. And I don't know how cutthroat those competitions are.
Right.
Like there's breedable bunnies and breedable ponies.
Well, I guess people have to have something to do.
Yeah, but you're not going to hire like several $1,000 worth of DDoS attacks to bring down your competitor in a breedable bunny space. Or maybe you would, I don't know.
Cool.
They seem like such nice people when I talk to them.
Oh, they always seem like nice people. Isn't that what they always say about every murderer? You know, he was a nice neighbor. I don't know what happened.
I'm trying to say something about the breedable bunny people that I don't know about.
Oh my goodness. Okay, well, I mean, we're coming up on our time here, and because we've shared emails that I've got a whole pile of other stuff that I'd love to talk to you about, but I think that would get us into another hour. In terms of final thoughts, right? We talked a little bit about augmented reality and a little bit in terms of the connection between the two. And my apologies, because I started to frame the question and then immediately went right out of my head. Oh, goodness. The final thoughts on where this stuff is going.
Well, hopefully, my vision of the future is that it's going to be as stupid and as mixed up as our present day reality. Not a dystopia, not a utopia, but people are going to be people wherever they go. I think a lot of mistakes people have when they're writing about the metaverse is that they think, oh, it's going to be you alone in a perfect world. Like, no, it's going to be you surrounded by a bunch of the same idiots you have in your real life. Or that there's going to be a difference between the virtual reality and real life. And that people are somehow going to be worse off in virtual reality than in real life or something like that. The whole Don Quixote thing. If you spend too much time online, you start losing sense of what's real or not. It's just as real, you know, folks. The virtual world is just as real as the real one. Movies are a virtual world. Music are a virtual world. Professional sports are a virtual world. Video games are a virtual world. Books are a virtual world. Cave paintings are a virtual world. We've always had virtual worlds. It's part of our civilization, and it's reality. It's just as real as anything else. And the difference between physical and virtual is going to disappear as soon as the next generation comes along. We used to be terrified that people were going to kill themselves watching TV, and then that they're going to, you know, just rot their brains by playing video games, and all of a sudden video games is a multi-million-dollar industry. And now the next thing we're scared is virtual reality. That's going to do something to our brains, and we're going to stop being able to tell real from fiction. I don't think that's going to happen. I think that virtual reality is expanding our universe the same way that books and movies and music and every new communication technology that we've invented has expanded our universe. It's not taken away from reality. It's adding to it. We're going to be living in a bigger reality. It's going to still be the same reality we have now with all the craziness that we have in it. It's just going to be dramatically bigger and offer people dramatically more opportunities and offer more connections and more possibilities and more creativity and more of everything that we want to do. But it's not going to be this horrible dystopian future where we abandon our real lives for this fake stuff. It's not going to be real versus fake.
Well,
that's my thinking about it.
I certainly hope not. So, Maria, I would like to thank you very, very much for, you know, spending the last 50 minutes or so with us. It's always a joy to have you show up to these conferences like this, and you know, it's, you know, hopefully we'll get to see more of you as you know, as we go along.
Well, I love coming here. I love this platform. Like I said, I love the creativity here, and I love the people and connections. I have met people from all over the world here, and it's been an amazing time. And thank you for having me.
Thank you very much. So this is a raw channel. We don't have to worry about whether or not James can let me know when he's ready to cut the stream.